So welcome to the Prayer Spaces session number 23, and tonight we're going to be thinking about Lent and Easter spaces, and I'm really pleased to be able to introduce to you Rebecca and Sarah Joy, who both, coincidentally, come from the Liverpool area. So we're going to hear a little bit about that from them. But as we gather, let's pause for a moment and kind of take a deep breath and settle in into your comfiest position in your chair and just be still and remember that we gather because Jesus is with us, because the Holy Spirit is with us, and just to be still for a moment, and then I'll pray and then we'll dive in. So, Father God, thank you for the opportunity we have to serve you and to serve children and young people and teachers in the work we do in schools. And we ask that you'll inspire our hearts, you'll enthuse our minds, and you'll help us to know what we can do to help more children and young people to connect with the real meaning of Lent and Easter. Thank you. Amen. So we're going to, as I say, we're going to hear from Rebecca and from Sarah Joy. So I'm going to start with Rebecca. So Rebecca Richardson from Highton. I have to say, we have a number of people around the country who we call our networkers. So they're people who are really good at doing prayer spaces and don't mind other people getting in touch with them to find out a bit more, especially if they want to drop in on them locally. And Rebecca is one of our networkers from Liverpool. So, hi Rebecca. Just tell folks gathered here who you are, what do you do in Liverpool, what are you up to?
Yeah, so my name is Rebecca and I am a schools and youth worker for the churches and schools across Highton Deanery in Liverpool, in the Diocese of Liverpool. I've been in this role for just coming on to 5 years now. I became a school chaplain to one of those schools a year ago, and then recently got married, so my name's changed in October, just gone. And after October, became the school chaplain for that same school 2 days a week, from 1 to 2 days a week.
Wow. So 2 days a week
So that's a little bit
chaplain,
about my role.
2 days a week as
Yeah,
chaplain in a primary school.
in a
Who's
primary school,
funding
yeah.
who's funding that?
So it's the deanery for the diocese, so Highton Deanery
Yeah.
funds that, which is amazing, really. It was created a
Mm.
role to be put together for schools and youth worker.
That is brilliant. So what does chaplaincy look like for you in school? What do you get up to?
So I'm a chaplain for a joint faith school. Recently, they invested in developing a school chapel for the school, which was created on a school balcony. I'm just putting together a report for that, so share with you, Tim, and prayer space in schools as well, people to have a look at,
Mm.
and doing worship with some of the children, doing collective worships with them, and also doing some work around their curriculum around RE, and also just bringing them in to do prayer space in the chapel as well, which is just such an amazing space now to be able to use that school as well, and for the staff as well too. So it's been amazing, really, to see that develop over the past 2 months.
Wow, that's fantastic. And you're enjoying it.
Love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Really, really do.
Now we've we asked you to talk a little bit about a Lent and Easter prayer spaces. So just tell us a little bit about how that came about. So this is a school that you were working in regularly?
So this is actually another school.
Yeah.
So the school that I'm chaplain for, I did the Lent prayer spaces with, and then another school, a Church of England school. That was the very first prayer space I ever did, and they have a sister church across the way from their school, and I worked with the priest and with the school, which are really in good connection with each other. And that was the very first Easter prayer space that I did on a bigger scale, in the main space of the church, which was lovely.
Wow. So you've got some photos to go with this, haven't
Yes.
you? Would it be helpful to start
Yeah, brilliant.
and then you can just talk us through what you did and
Yeah.
so how this is the first press space you did in that school.
Yes, in that school, yes. Yeah.
So how does an Easter press space end? How's that become the first thing that you do for them? What's the story behind
So
that
they
connection?
they asked if um they were heard about some of the work that I'd done, and they said it was around that time or at Easter time, and they said we'd love to explore the Easter story in a different way. We do assemblies, we do collective worships, we do different services throughout the year, but we'd love to do it where the children could experience it in a different way and find out the different parts of the story in a more meaningful way, to explore it and relate it back to themselves. So I said, oh, well, I've just become, a prayer spaces networker. Would you like to, as I'm doing this prayer space for Easter, I said, I'd love to do one for you. And they said,
Mm,
yes, please. So the whole
mm.
school came in class by class, and we did that together. So
Wow.
um, that's the
So
first one.
so this was in a church. It's yeah,
This is in the church.
yeah.
So the
Mm,
church has a hall, and then it
mm,
has like the main body of the church, which you'll see in a few of the photos.
mm,
Up higher up is the church. So
yeah.
each of the stations all around the Easter prayer series around the Garden of Gethsemane, which was one of the first ones, which we planted some seeds, planted some prayers, and the children wrote on their little sticks some prayers that they would like to ask God for, to help them with, as we were thinking about Jesus praying in the Garden of Gethsemane and what he might have asked for help for. So we asked them, what do you need help with? Do you need help, or do you know someone or a place in the world that might need help? And the children planted seeds and wrote down on the sticks what they might need help with. And then the children then watched them grow in schools. They got to take that back to school and watch them grow. And they
Mm.
became like really tall sunflowers, which was really beautiful. And then they planted them in their school garden, which was lovely.
Oh, fabulous. And this was just to dive into the church thing. So you ran this in the church. Was that because there wasn't enough space in the school or did,
Because the school and the church have such a great connection, and
mm,
because they wanted to do it on a bigger scale, they didn't have the space at the time to do something like
yeah.
this, because their hall is always in use, and their
Mm,
hall actually is a lot smaller than the actual space of the church at the front. So
mm,
they said with the link with the church, would be able to do it on a bigger scale in the church. So the church offered that for the school to be able to,
yeah,
because they're only across the road, to be able to.
yeah. Right. That's yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And presumably made it a bit easier for you in terms of setting up and all that
Yeah,
sort
so
of
I
stuff.
I had working with the priest, we had a really great team of people that came along.
Mm,
You'll see in a picture in a minute, the priest she's now vicar there at the minute. She was curate at the time.
mm,
And now the school has a bit more space. I also now go into the school and do prayer spaces in the school as well. It's
mm,
just they were in a tricky situation at the time where they didn't have the space and they wanted to see it on a bigger scale, what it would look like.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. So what are we looking at here?
So we can see
Mm,
Palm Sunday with the lights hanging down from the altar rail. So we're thinking about saying thank you for those people in our lives who help us, who bring us joy, who bring us happiness. So one of the children, my brother and sister, because they look after me all the time. And then before that, we've got the cross on the floor, which you can just see on the left here, and that was all about the resurrection, talking about about the crucifixion, talking about the things that might be want to say ask God for forgiveness for, the things that we're worried about, what do we need God's help with or forgiveness for. They wrote down on little post-it note hearts, and then thinking about the stones, we had some stones and some water, and thinking about the stones being really heavy, and thinking about the cross and how it was heavy for Jesus, but also about our worries that weigh us down. So they got to wash some of the stones, which I really liked doing because it was something a bit different than writing things down. So every
mm,
different part was a little bit different. So they were either washing things, taking part in things, writing things down. There was always something different for them to do, a bit more creative and a bit
yeah.
different for them to take part in.
Wow, that's really lovely.
And
Um,
then we've got the resurrection, which is
mhm,
all about our hopes and dreams. And we use the bishop's chair, which is really cool. And it was really good. So we had to use that. And we had
yeah,
some flowers, and some of the children wrote down like their hopes and dreams. Talks about obviously 3 days later, Jesus rose again, and it was such a hope for people in their lives. And this is the Kim, who's now the priest as well, and
mm,
she did some oil on their hands, did the sign of the cross, which is really beautiful if they'd like to do that. And the children really enjoyed doing that, thinking about their hopes and dreams for the future, and Jesus being with them every step of the journey, which was lovely.
yeah. Wow.
And then that's one of the most powerful photos, because one of the children wanted to put the crown of thorns on his head and think about what it might have felt like for Jesus. And he was
Mm,
really, he was really, really talking about it with the other children and thinking about that story and what happens in real life in a real way. So this
Mm.
is really powerful picture.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. That yeah, that it looks like a lot of fun, but it also I love how you have drawn out some of the so much of the meaning from the different kind of aspects of Easter. That just really, really lovely. What was the response of the children like? If this is the first prayer space they'd seen, how did they
The ch-
engage?
So
What
the
did they think?
children walked in and they know the church very well because they go there for services and things. So
Mm,
the way it happens is you go into the church and you can't really see the church, like the altar, unless you pull the doors back. So when we
mm,
pulled the doors back, they were like, they couldn't believe like their church had been changed into something different and something exciting. And they just loved the idea of being able to to write things down, to be creative, to do something different, to explore the story in such a different way, but also the fact that there was so many different people around that space, including myself, to be able to tell that in a different way. And they really enjoyed just going around the different stations, exploring that in a different way and being able to see it, as a visual more than anything, I think it was. And the children just really, really enjoyed being a part of that space, which was really good.
wow, that's brilliant. Have you done another one in the church since, or have you
In the
rated to
church,
the school?
I've in the church I've done a smaller one. I've done like a Christmas one, but now we've got another space in the school now, which has been taken over. Is really really good. So I've just recently done a Christmas prayer space in there,
Mm,
and one of the children was like, "Wow, it's like Disneyland. It's just like all the lights and everything. It was just beautiful." So,
yeah,
but yeah, really really good, and the church are really supportive as well, which is great.
fabulous. Now, you're also going to tell us about a Lent space, aren't you? So,
Yes, this was
mm,
a Lent space in the school in the chapel that well in sorry where the chapel is now, but this was the room before the chapel, which is now something else.
mm,
So the Lent prayer spaces we talked a lot about being on a journey. So you can imagine my task afterwards, a lot of sand went everywhere. But we had a lot of fun, which was good. So we did
yeah,
a lot about journeying in the desert. So we
mm,
talked about Jesus going on a journey, about the 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness, thinking about the journey that they're on through school, thinking about who they would like to pray for or what they would like to pray for on their own journey, and what would you like to pray to God about on this journey. We had some forgiveness stones on the right,
mm,
thinking um about what you might like to ask forgiveness for, thinking about the stones of the story in the wilderness when Jesus was invited to transform stone into bread, thinking a little bit about that part of the story, thinking about temptation, thinking about asking for forgiveness, which was really, really good. And
mm,
then we also talked ourselves, that we had some little people thinking about ourselves and our own journey, thinking about the promises we might like to take up or something that we might like to do during Lent. We talked about doing things for Lent, and what people do for Lent. So we talked about promises, giving up or taking away. And Lent is always a time to focus and prepare ourselves for that
mm,
journey when we lead up to Easter. Um, this was one of the first ones I did for Lent, and some of the ones I created myself, really. And a lot of sand was involved, but it was really, really quite visual and quite.
yeah,
The children really enjoyed it being a little bit different.
mm,
Um, so this was actually the very last day that we did this was when we found out that we were going into lockdown. So a lot of children were praying about COVID, praying
mm,
about SATs, praying about what the future might hold for them. A lot of them were quite worried after seeing the news. So this was really quite a vital one, but a lot of it kind of led to coronavirus and about COVID and about the worry of that, as well as being on a journey, thinking about
yeah,
the Lent journey as well.
wow,
And
yeah,
then before they left,
mm,
we talked about Jesus being the light of the world, and each and every child in the school was given this prayer and a little wooden cross as well.
mm,
So over 400 children and also staff as well received a little wooden cross and this prayer, and it was kind of meant to be that that was probably the last, which was the last day that they left school. and
Mm.
not knowing what was going to happen after,
Oh,
with COVID, and they've got to
yeah.
take this cross home with them. So
Wow. What just that's so lovely. I just want to say to folks, if you've got questions, Rebecca, do put them in the chat as we go along, and we might come back to those
yeah,
in a moment. What's been the so that was presumably that was in sort of February, March 2020, March
yeah,
2020, yeah.
March 2020. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm glad you got to do that because I was booked up to do a 2 week one, and it started the week after the week of lockdown, so we never ended up
Oh
doing it.
gosh. Yeah.
So well done for pipping this one to the post, as it were.
We just made it in time. I
Yeah,
remember the
yeah,
head
yeah.
teacher coming in saying, "We're going into lockdown, Rebecca." I was like, "Oh no." So it was yeah, I think it
Have you
was meant
been
to be.
back to that school? Have you done other spaces
So
in
this
that
is the
school?
school that I'm chaplain for, where I did the Lent prayer
Ah,
spaces.
yeah.
So now the room's changed, and now it's like a chapel, which is really great.
Mm,
And the children just love taking part in prayer activities, prayer spaces, because
yeah.
everything is explored in a different way. They love finding out about prayer using creative kind of things, writing things down. They're just so open about having that conversation with you, like writing things down, putting things in things,
Mm,
using objects to help them explore what the story means or what the theme is of what we're talking about.
yeah.
So it just talks about it in such a different way. And
So I'm fascinated by what their response was to the press space after this one, because I'm guessing there was quite a bit of a gap before coming
yeah,
back in. But
there
what was
was.
those pupils that had been into the Lent prayer space? What were they like when they came into the next one that you did, whenever that was?
Well, they kept mithering me and couldn't wait. They were like, "Are we doing another one yet?" I'm like, "Hold on a minute, we've just got back." So, but when they
Yeah.
got back, it was they were like, "Are we going to do something like that again? Can we do something like that again? Can we have the sand?" And I was like, "Oh no." But
Yeah.
it was really like the children were really excited about it, and when they
Oh,
came back in, um, they couldn't wait to be part of it again, and they were really excited about being creative, finding those different ways about how learning how to pray. And that we can pray anytime, anywhere, and in any way. And they just really enjoyed that. Quite a lot of the children reflected on that afterwards, particularly after the Lent and Easter prayer spaces, was talking about how they could, because they were all so different, all the stations, thinking about how they can pray in different ways. They thought that praying was putting your hands together, closing your eyes and being still, and they realized that prayer could be explored in so many other ways. And they actually took some of that home with them and realized that they could use their play-doh to be able to explore prayer, or write things down, or do something a bit creative and different to explore how they could pray. And I think that made such a huge impact on some of
great.
these children. So
We've got I want to move on to Sarah Joy very
yeah, of course.
quickly. We've got just a few questions whether we need to where did you get the crosses from?
The little wooden crosses, Amazon.
Uh-huh, there we go. Probably the answer for most of the questions about where did you get that from would be yes. Can you share your instruction sheets with us? Are you happy to share your instructions with
Yes, of
people? Yeah.
course. Yeah, happy
Marvelous.
to.
Okay,
Yeah.
we can sort that out later. Um, and do you have any tips for spaces that have to do with for all faiths and none, I suppose, rather than just for Christianity? Although I'm guessing that there were pupils from other faiths in the school
Yes,
at some.
so one of my tips for this is the school that I'm chaplain for is a joint faith school, and we have a lot of children with other faiths as well. So the way I've spoken about it is rather than using the words praying to God, think about a thought, a wish, a hope, or a feeling.
Hmm,
So those
okay,
four words: thought, wish,
hmm,
hope, or feeling, and talk about it in that way, because then they relate it to their own faith in that way. So thought, wish, hope, or feeling. That's what I've
yeah,
learned just from my own experience, because children with other faiths have then been very open to wanting to pray. And they
right.
said, "Can I do it in that way?" Which is great.
And that's really helpful answer. And how many people do you have in the space and do they explain the activities to the children? or do you
Yeah,
rely
so
on
I've
the
done it
instruction
in
cards?
different ways. So I've done it where I've had volunteers, and I've done it where I've also been by myself. So I have a class of 30 where I come in. Sometimes I had smaller groups, but I explain what each of the stations are. There's always a station kind of extra instruction sheet with each one, and there's always teachers on hand, and I always explain to them beforehand. But I'm always around to help them. But I just kind of explain each one. We always do one together, then I explain
Yeah,
each one to them. So
yeah, great.
yeah.
One final question. Do you use scripture in the instruction cards or in the,
In some of them I do, depending on
yeah,
what theme it is. If it's
yeah,
Lent or Easter or things like that, I do use a lot of
yeah,
scripture from the especially Bible stories and a lot of scripture from them.
yeah.
But yeah, I do
Yeah, I think we'd expect that for a Lent or an Easter space, as
definitely.
that's the context it's connecting to.
Yeah,
But that's fabulous. Thank you so much, Rebecca. So,
thank
folks,
you.
if you've got other questions for Rebecca based on what she said so far, then please continue to put them in the chat, and we'll come back with those after the breakout rooms. But I want to move on to Sarah Joy, who is
Hello.
hi, and whereabouts are you from, Sarah Joy? You're
Oh, where am I from? I'm from the Midlands, but I live in Liverpool and I work in Liverpool.
yeah, and where do you work?
I work in a joint denomination Catholic and Anglican secondary academy
Oh, right.
in South Liverpool. So it's yeah, year 7 to year 13, including sixth form.
Yeah.
Um, very interesting context to work in. It's a very deprived area.
Mhm.
Um, lots of needs, lots of
Yeah.
safeguarding and welfare. And I'm a
And you're
chaplain.
and you're the chaplain there. How much? How many days are you chaplain
Full
a week?
time. They won't let
Full
me do
time.
less. Full
Right.
time,
Yeah.
apart from as of today, I'm on maternity leave.
Ah, right. Okay. Well, congratulations on that. So, what does your if you're there 5 days a week, what does that what how do they fill your time during the week? What
Um,
sort of things do you
good
do as
question.
well as prayer spaces, which we'll get onto? Yeah.
So roughly half my job is kind of all the Christian bits of the school. So collective worship, like assemblies and things. Um, some kind of engaging with the primary schools, um, charity work, that
Mm,
kind of thing. And then the other half of my job is pastoral, so a lot of interventions and one-to-ones and kind of counselling, support groups, safeguarding, welfare, food hampers,
mm.
that kind of thing. It's very varied.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. I big fan of chaplaincy here. So, and I'm a big fan of secondary schools. So I'm the secondary part of the team. Naomi here is the primary part of the team, and is even this week running a prayer space. So Naomi has been in school doing it today, and is now with us now. So, tell us about, you've run, how many prayer spaces have you run at your school?
Oh, that's a good question, and I've lost count, so I
Roughly,
can give you a
roughly.
proper answer. But
Yeah.
I've been there for 5 years, and
Yeah.
I've probably done around six, seven at
Wow.
this
Yeah.
point. It's
Mm,
hard to count because at one point we had a dedicated room for it and we would kind of use it a lot more ad
mm,
hoc.
mm.
And then at other points we've had like a very specific this week and then this
Yeah.
week. So it's kind of hard to count.
That's all press spaces, and it's all good. Like both of those are great. But you've done Easter prayer spaces there. Is it East? Yeah. Um,
Yep.
so you're going to tell us a little bit about what you did for an
Yeah.
Easter
Shall
prayer
I share my
in
screen and you
secondary
can
school.
have a look
Yeah,
at the
do.
similar
Yeah.
things? So I'll just show you a quick 30-second video to begin with and then I'll explain in a bit more detail. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, that's good. Are
Great.
you able to
This just
talk to this
gives
as we
you a
go?
quick overview.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's not too jumpy
Mm.
of one of the spaces we did.
Wow. The empty tomb. Oh, wow.
So that just gives you
Wow.
kind of overview of like how the space all fitted together. It was the room we used was a kind of weird outbuilding to the school that had previously been a nursery, an isolation room, an exam room. It just kind of one of those rooms that was used for everything. But was free for a little while, or we managed to get it use of it for a while, and it was kind of the perfect space and size for this. So we did, I think, was it 8 stations? I lost track when I was watching that video back.
Yeah. Looked like it. Yeah.
And so it takes you through sort of the stations of the cross, but not the actual stations of the cross. But the journey, obviously, from Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday. So I'll just like briefly explain each one. So
Yeah.
they started with Palm Sunday. The students didn't actually do it in order because that would have been impossible to facilitate, but they were all like numbered so that they could tell how the story fit together, regardless. So the Palm Sunday one was about like thankfulness and praise, and they were writing things on leaves and laying them on the ground with the coats and things to like emulate the Palm Sunday story. Then they had the Last Supper, so the table was kind of laid with the bread and the wine and different images to kind of help them imagine. And they were talking about their friendships, and I'm trying to imagine what it would be like to kind of have that last meal with your friends, if there's anything they would maybe say to their friends if they knew they weren't going to see them again. And then they made these pipe cleaner people and thought about friendships and relationships and things. They loved the pipe cleaners. Then they had the Garden of Gethsemane, which we thought about how Jesus like poured out his heart and was really honest about his emotions. And this was quite a like mental health focused station that they really enjoyed. Had a few different activities just to help them like express their emotions. So we had glitter jars, which they love, like calm jars, I call them, like an emotions board with different emojis, and they could stick stickers on depending on how they're feeling. There was a few other activities and worksheets that they could do to just help them express their feelings.
Yeah.
Then there was the one about Jesus being arrested, which was all about injustice and things in the world that are not fair. So there was different news articles on the washing line of like things that were going on in the world at that point, thinking about injustices around the world, and writing a prayer and just putting it in a post box for those situations or situations that they knew of. Then there was one about Jesus carrying the cross. That was about like worries and burdens, and they wrote down whatever was on their mind, whatever was burdening them, and they put them in the worry bag, and kind of were invited to say a prayer or invited to ask God to give them peace. Then this one's quite similar to what Rebecca did, her one actually, with the like stones and washing the stones, but also I inherited this cross that had holes drilled into it, and it's been really useful because you can roll up little prayers and stick them in the cross, or roll up your things you want to say sorry for and kind of stick them to the cross, which the kids really enjoy doing. So that was part of that one as well. And then there was this weird little side room in this part of the school, so I managed to make it really dark, and we turned that into the empty tomb. And we thought about the questions that the disciples would have had, like how they would have been really confused and like not sure what to do and where to go next after everything that had happened in this sort of waiting period. So we thought about our big questions, and every single prayer space I've ever done has always had a big questions station, because it's usually where the most interesting conversations happen, and the kids immediately engage with it and get it. So they also just really enjoyed sitting in this kind of dark room, but it was a good chance to have some quite deep theological discussions with them. And then the final one was about the resurrection, and that was about our kind of hopes and dreams and light and darkness. So I got the black scratch paper where if you scratch it, it comes out all like rainbow coloured. Again, I've used that quite a few times because the kids really enjoy it, but it really clearly like demonstrates the whole idea of light and darkness, and they got to draw pictures and write things down. So that was the whole station, the whole prayer space.
And was it whole classes coming through? Or was this
yeah, so we did it we did it a class at a time. So I think we did it with the whole of year 7 and 8 and some of the year 9 classes, depending on we couldn't quite get them all with timetables and things, but they did it during the RE lessons. So that RE teachers would bring them to the space and help sort of facilitate for the hour. And I would explain it all, and then let them go off in little small groups, and then we'd have some time to kind of feedback afterwards, which worked really well. But we also invited some primary schools in, some of our feeder schools, and then we also opened, because the space was there and it was, you know, I'd put so much time and effort into making it nice, it seemed a waste not to like get it used to its maximum potential. So we also opened it for an hour after school for some of the local churches to just drop in and come and use the space, and kind of see how it works, maybe get ideas, maybe just have some time for themselves as well. So it was a nice way to involve the community. Yeah.
And was that, how easy was that to organise with the school? Because I imagine some schools will say yes to that, and some would be more reticent, perhaps. I don't know.
Do you mean with the community
Inviting
side of it,
others
or do you
in,
mean the whole thing?
just inviting others in.
Oh no, they think, being a chaplain, I do feel like I have quite a lot of like free reign to kind of invite anyone I want in, and because from a cynical point of view, from the school's point of view, it like ticks a lot of boxes doing a prayer space, like in terms of church inspections and Ofsted and all of that side of things. Like they love it, not necessarily for the right reasons, but and one of the things that faith schools have to show that they're doing is connecting, making links with local church and community. But also some of those local churches that came to use the space had also been volunteering to help out with the space as well. So I tried to, for as many of the sessions as possible, get some of the local vicars, local church members from all ecumenical different churches to come in and just help, like facilitate, but also usually I'd kind of interview them for a few minutes at the beginning about what prayer meant to them, and kind of like what it means in their life.
That's great. I mean, that's making best use of the personal stories that are in the room in those and from those people. Which links to a great question from Federica. When they visit, are you always in the prayer space to guide and explain, or do you let them use the space independently? Were there times when students could just come in and use the space, or was there always one of you or one of the team in there?
So I was always in there, and usually there was always at least two members of staff. It becomes quite difficult to facilitate otherwise. And it was a relatively small space to have 30 children in, so there was always someone on hand.
And just favorite question is favorite memory. What from doing that space, were there any particularly special moments or insights that struck you, or anything that any particular stories from the young people that stick with you?
I think that's the thing that struck me most. I mean, some of the individual conversations were just like really profound. But I think what struck me most is we have like a class in each year group that is like a smaller class, SEND students, and whenever we've done the prayer spaces, whenever that group is brought in, often the staff beforehand, if they've not seen the prayer space, are a little bit anxious, and they're a little bit like, oh no, your stuff's going to get ruined, or your things are going to get trashed. Sometimes these groups can have a bit of a bad rep, and honestly, those are always the groups that engage the most. And as soon as they come into the space, there's like an atmosphere change, and staff are always amazed by like how sort of calm and like deeply they're actually thinking about things as well. So for me, that's always the most kind of special time. I mean, it helps that they're often smaller classes and you can have a bit more one-to-one time with them, but it's really nice to see those students who normally struggle to even just be in a classroom engage with the spaces. I just remembered there's a couple more photos, but I don't know how much time I've got. Probably no time.
A couple of questions. Can we have detailed description of the Lent spaces? So if you're happy to share what instructions about what you did, people are always super helpful for people, even if it's just for a starting point. Second question is, do you play music in the prayer space? This would be for you and for Rebecca. do you use music as a sort of background music, atmospheric music in the space? Sarah Joy
I
first.
have I have done like for the most recent one we did, we had a Christmas playlist of a mixture of worship and Christmas songs
Mm.
in the background. But I also have like a sound machine which I often use. Like it makes like bird noises and nature noises, and sometimes I'll like hide it in the Garden of
Oh,
Gethsemane, and it makes it more of like a multi-sensory experience. So that works quite
ooh,
well as
oh,
well.
we want to know what that is. We want to hear about that. Rebecca, how about you? Have you used music do you use music in the prayer space?
Yes, I do quite a lot really. It depends on like how things are. Like I think like Sarah was saying, we have like a group of children like SEN who come in and and do the prayer space and things, and some of them like to have it where it's just really quiet, but quite a lot of time I do have it quite low, like just like worship music in the background, just really calm, relaxing.
Mm.
But yeah, so it just depends really.
Yeah, yeah. And another question for both of you. Then Sarah Joy, I'll come back to your last few couple of slides.
Sure.
Question from Silvana, who's in Malta. Hi, Silvana. Do children move from one station to another individually or in groups of, say, 3 or 4 or more? And how many children per session? I mean, you're dealing with whole classes, weren't you, Sarah Joy? But
Yeah, so with a
are
class
they?
of 30,
Mm,
tends to be about 8 stations, so that they're usually in groups of 3, maybe
mm,
4, moving
yeah.
around.
Okay. Just finish off with your last couple of slides. Just tell us what we're seeing.
This was just to show you when we had a dedicated space for it, and also now in the chapel in the school, how we've
Mm,
just used little elements of individual prayer stations to kind of
mm,
have something for students to engage with. So like little thing, it's not whole space, it's not whole journey, but just a few little things that we found work. So like we have the big questions wall in the chapel, we have these like high five prayers that I invented. The kids like sort of high five on their way out, and it just helps them engage. And post box, and we used a felt wall once that was really good. The felt just sticks to felt, so you can make
mm,
pictures. And they love the calm corner, always have the glitter jars,
mm,
love writing things in sand or salt.
mm,
So just a way to show if you haven't got a dedicated space, or you just at the back of a classroom, or you don't have time to plan an entire thing for Easter or Christmas, you can still use little elements of prayer stations in your classroom or in your whatever space you have.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's brilliant. Great. Just thank you both so much. That's very just so inspiring, very practical. Yeah. And obviously, and if you're comfortable, happy to share the resource ideas as well. Ultimately useful. What we'd like to do next is to invite you to chat with some other people who are on the call who are interested in doing press spaces. So uh, we're going to give you about 10 minutes and we'll come back at 20 past. And just so you know what time you're aiming for, so we'll come back at 8:20. But introduce yourselves briefly, a little bit about who you are, where you are, and your experience of prayer spaces. If you might find that there's somebody in your breakout room who's got some great experience to share, and you could chat to them, find out a bit about them. When you come back, if we could if you can come back with maybe 1 or 2 questions, and we'll finish off with some more questions for Sarah Joy and for Rebecca just before we close. But that's what's going to happen for the next 10 minutes. So Naomi, if you'd like to press the button, and we'll see you in 10 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you met with somebody inspiring, interesting, interested, looking for answers that you were able to help them with. Um, uh, so we've just got another few minutes to pick up any questions that you might have um, uh, from what we've heard today. We've heard about music. Do pupils move around? So Janice asks, please do you share the high five prayers? Yeah, Sarah Joy, tell us about the high five prayers. Can you just tell us quickly about those that you showed?
Yeah, so I got a new space at the beginning of this year. My office moved in, and I wanted to make it really engaging for them. And I don't know what made me think about it, but it just popped into my head this idea of high five prayers. It's a really quick like way of students engaging in reflection that
Mm,
takes 2 seconds. So it's right by the door, so they can do it on their way out. And there's 6 different types of prayers. There's like a thank you one and a sorry one, and different ones, and they're sort of hand-sized and laminated so they can be anti-backed. But you can, I have a website where I put some of my art resources and chaplaincy resources, because I used to be an artist. So I'll put the link in a second, because that's just a free download on there, so you can print that yourself and use it yourself. There's loads of other resources on there as well.
Yeah, Sarah Joy very modestly says, I used to be an artist. Yeah, she churns out some absolutely beautiful artworks and things. So yeah, so I used
Just to
to.
say sorry, I was just going to say one of the other resources on there. Some of the stuff is free, some of the stuff that, like, there's like a shop as well. I'd made something for Christmas, which is like a Christmas tract of the Christmas story, like a colouring Christmas story, which we gave to all the students that came to our most recent prayer space. But lots of people asked me about it, so a lot of churches and schools sort of bought the download from me. But I am planning to make one for Easter this year as well, depending on when this baby comes and how much time I have before then. But so just keep an eye out for that, if that's something that might be useful for your Easter resources.
Brilliant. Lizzie says, I have a question for a lady in I suppose moved to, where are we? In my room. She did a pop-up bereavement prayer space recently. What did she do in it? We've whoever that is, if you want to just let us know who you are. We've also done those types of things here, so I can talk about that, but I'd love to know who it was that did the prayer space. I'll talk about that while just if that was you and you're happy to talk about it.
It was me. It was me.
Oh, great. Tell us a bit about what you did.
Hi, I'm Kay. I'm a school chaplain. We lost a very young parent very recently. And we opened a prayer space. We're very fortunate to have a chapel within school. And we had a cross very similar to Sarah Joy's that has holes drilled in it. And so we offered an opportunity for people to write prayers or any fears and worries around this bereavement, because it was a very sudden, with absolutely no warning, bereavement. So I think it was quite frightening for a lot of people, you know, the possibility of a parent disappearing without warning. Lots of fears arose out of that. So we gave the opportunity to express fears and worries. We had a worry monster for people to put their worries into, but also a friendship book with lots of hearts, where people were able to leave messages for friends, for people who were important to them, to let them know, because obviously this tragedy left people worried that they weren't able to say goodbye, or weren't able to say all the things they wanted to say. So we opened up a space for them to be able to say those things now, if you wanted to tell a friend, or if you wanted to, you know, say what was special about somebody else that you'd never got around to saying. And so that's some of the things we did.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you. We've also done something similar here. Yeah, thank you for sharing your story about that, which looked like this. So this was a school where there was a student death on the Friday. So myself and my team went in on the following week, because we've done this in other schools on our patch, several other schools. Just take a notice board, some cut out shapes, and presence ourselves in the library, and the students' best friends come and they write their memories and that, and then they start to bring photos and things. And this kind of season of bereavement remembrance lasts for about a week, and then on the Friday we get the best friends of the girl who died. They came in and transferred all of these notes and pictures and things into a scrapbook, which was later given to the family. So I just think it's thank you for your example as well. I just think it's a lovely thing that we as the local church can do. We go gently, we go to offer something, not to impose anything. We go to be a listening ear for those that want to talk, and just to allow others to be in a space for those that don't want to talk. But it can be a real comfort to a school, because when there is a death, whether it's a student or member of staff, it goes through the whole school community. And as those that are not directly connected with the loss, we can be a kind of a peaceful presence and a supportive presence in that time. So it's a tragic time, but it's a really helpful thing for local church to do. So thank you for chipping in on that. That's really helpful. We've got about 2 minutes now. So just before, we said we finish up our state, and we like to live by our promises. As name is posted, this recording will join the others in the Prayer Spaces Sessions section of our YouTube channel, and also we'll get back in touch with you by email with 1 or 2 other resource ideas that have cropped up. Sarah Joy, Rebecca, any other thoughts, things that you meant to say that you didn't get to say that you think would be helpful? Just dive in.
I'll just say one other thing that we did in the Christmas one that has just gotten, that worked really well, but obviously incurs more of a cost. We each station, the students collected an item. So as well as the activity that they were doing and the story that was on the wall of part of the Christmas story, they had like a journey bag that they took with them, and they picked up an item that was related to that station. Like, so for example, with the angels, they got a halo, which was a glow stick like bracelet. They got candy crooks from the shepherds and things like that. But it just really helped for them to then be able to take that home and show the parents. And I sort of challenged all of them to try and remember what each thing represented. And they just loved it because it's presents. But that worked really well. If you've got a bit of a budget, it did work really well, and the school was really happy to make that happen. So
fabulous, thank you. We've got the next ones of these. So the next one is the second half of the spring term. On March the 11th, we'll be thinking about doing prayer spaces in strongly multi-faith settings. So where there are a large number of pupils from other than a Christian faith. Usually that would be Muslims, but could be other mixed groups. So how do we run a prayer space that is inclusive and welcoming of them without compromising the Christian foundation that we have with these spaces? So we'll be talking about that with a guest or 2. So that's March the 11th. And then on April the 29th, one of our networkers, Ali, who is just amazing, she helps schools think about how to help their pupils to flourish spiritually, and she'll be with us talking about spiritual flourishing, what it is, and how we can help children and young people to flourish spiritually through the work we do with prayer spaces. So she'll be a little bit more of a deep dive into what is spirituality, what does it mean to be spiritual, how do we nurture that spirituality in the children and young people that we're working with, how do we draw that out of them and give them space to be able to express that and grow in it. So that's what's coming up. March the 11th, April 29th. All of those will be on our events page, on the events page of the website. We'll post a plug for those, along with any other in-person training. We're doing some in-person training in Bracknell in a few weeks' time, so that's on the website. And I'm off to Exeter and Tiverton in Devon in April. But if you think you can gather a dozen or so people who would love to learn about prayer spaces, and we could maybe come and see you and do an in-person training day with you and with your friends and colleagues from around your area. So look out for that. I think that's about it. Anything, Naomi, that I've forgotten? Because that can happen. I'm just shaking the head. Wow. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you particularly to Rebecca and Sarah Joy for sharing what you've been doing in schools so brilliantly, so clearly and helpfully, and for the resources you're going to share. That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you very, very much. Thank you all for being here and for making Prayer Space Sessions work, and for chipping in and chatting to one another and making friends and sharing ideas, because that's what it's all about. Prayer Space in Schools is here to serve you and the schools that you work in. So if you've got any questions or want to know anything, just send us an email or get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. That's it. I'm going to pray us out at this point. So we just pray, God, thank you so much for what we get to do. Thank you for the children and young people that we get to serve. We pray, Holy Spirit, that you would inspire this generation of children and young people to discover and follow you. Thank you. Amen.